I discovered the terrifying truth: ghosts of the living still haunt our world. I never should have opened that door. What I found behind it sent chills down my spine. My routine was typical that day. I sat in my small, dimly lit apartment, the faint smell of old books lingering in the air. The clock ticked monotonously, a reminder that time was moving forward, unlike those trapped between realms. There was something off, though, an unsettling presence hanging like a thick fog. As I moved through my home, shadows danced along the walls. They flickered in and out, whispering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. The air grew colder, wrapping around me like a shroud. I pulled the collar of my shirt tighter, feeling a knot of fear clench in my stomach. It was just a flicker, I told myself. Just my imagination. But then I heard a soft, raspy breath, right behind me. The hairs on my neck stood on end as I glanced over my shoulder. Nothing. Just darkness swallowing the corners of the room. I tried to shake it off, to continue with my day. The candles I had lit flickered violently, casting eerie shadows that seemed to creep closer. I swore I could see figures in the flickering light, faces twisted in despair. My heart raced, pounding in my chest like a drum. Then, a loud bang echoed through the silence. A book fell off the shelf, landing with a thud. It shouldn't have happened. I hadn't touched it. Panic clawed at me. Had I disturbed something? Was I being watched? The walls felt like they were closing in, echoing my growing dread. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. I had to know. I walked toward the door at the end of the hall, where the whispers grew louder. If there were answers to be found, they were behind that door. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. What was waiting for me there? Were there truly ghosts trapped in limbo, desperate to connect with the living? It felt like the air was charged, alive with expectation. Just as my fingers curled around the cold metal, a piercing scream rang out, high-pitched, chilling. It engulfed me, paralyzing. I jolted back, heart pounding. A shadow moved behind the door, growing larger, darker. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. And then the door slammed shut. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The thud of the door reverberated in my chest, and a cold sweat trickled down my spine. The scream still echoed in my ears, a haunting melody of despair that threatened to pull me under. Even as I stumbled back, I felt the oppressive weight of the air pressing in on me, as if something was struggling to break free from the confinement of the room. I heard the whispers again, sharper now, each syllable cutting through the silence like a knife. They seemed to emanate not just from behind the door but from within the very walls of my apartment. The shadows twisted and contorted, having changed into amorphous, writhing forms that seemed to crawl towards me, their blackness a stark contrast to the dim light flickering from the candles. "Help us," they seemed to wail, their combined voices muffled and desperate, each word laced with anguish and longing. My breath hitched. Were these the souls urging for release? I gathered enough courage to inch closer to the closed door, the wood groaning under the weight of the invisible energies pressing against it. I could hear my own heartbeat, a frantic rhythm in harmony with the whispers swelling in intensity. The urge to escape battled with the primal instinct to uncover the truth. Who are you?" I shouted, my voice quivering. "What do you want?" Silence fell, so thick it was suffocating. I could feel my hands tremble as I placed them on the door's surface. The cold was unnatural, sharp like metal, and an icy wind whirled around my ankles as if trying to drag me away. I could almost make out a face in the shadows, eyes hollow and pleading, a mouth opening in a soundless scream, eternally trapped in a moment of agony. Before I could process my next move, the whispers grew chaotic, converging into a chorus of enraged wails. They echoed in my mind, making it difficult to think. The very air around me crackled with energy, a build-up of tension that was almost unbearable. I stumbled back as if struck, losing my balance and crashing into the nearby bookshelf. Everything surged, the walls pulsed, vibrating angrily, and the flickering candles extinguished one by one, plunging the room into darkness. Then, only the faint, trembling light from my phone screen illuminated the scene before me, casting ghostly shadows against the walls, and then it came a loud crash, something rumbling within the closed room beyond the door. It sounded like furniture being overturned, like a battle of unseen entities. My heart raced, and I collapsed to the floor, shielding myself from the unseen horrors. The sounds grew louder, becoming an overpowering cacophony. A low growl echoed, then a sorrowful cry spiraled out, piercing the silence like a knife. I was paralyzed with fear, clinging to the edges of my consciousness as the shadows grew more defined, their shapes morphing, creeping ever closer. Suddenly, my phone flashed, illuminating the doorway for a fleeting moment. I gasped, for through the crack, I saw something, a hand, ghostly white, emerging from the gap, beckoning. It looked almost flesh, yet it shimmered with an otherworldly glow. "Help me," it whispered softly, the voice both alluring and terrifying, beckoning me with an insidious charm. I felt it drip into my soul, the horrific realization that the plea wasn't meant for my help, but for something far worse. Something ancient and hungry. Just as I regained to my senses, the door flung open with terrifying force, revealing nothing, just emptiness swirling with darkness. And in that instant, as I scrambled to escape, I was met with a chilling coldness wrapping around my ankle, starting to pull me back, pulling me toward that abyss of unspeakable terrors. I screamed. No. Not me. But the darkness closed in, wrapping around me like chains. I was being pulled, fighting against an invisible force, and then I heard it again, the soft whisper, impossibly innocent. "Stay with us." As I teetered on the edge of the unknown, the last thing I could see was that hand, gripping the threshold, slowly pulling itself back into the shadows, and everything went black. It twisted, that suffocating void of darkness, wrapping itself around my limbs. Panic clawed at my throat as I gasped, feeling the icy fingers of desperation close tighter around my ankles. The last flicker of sanity, that thin thread holding me to reality, was fraying. Just when I thought I was lost to that ravenous abyss, a jolt surged through me, a surge so electric and painful that it abruptly pulled me from the grip of the shadows, slamming my body against the hard floor. As my vision swam back into focus, I realized I had rolled several feet away from the door. But I wasn't free. My heart raced while I stared into the thick, suffocating darkness filling the room. The whispers had transformed into an angry murmur, a rising tide of voices that roared through the silence, issuing a hushed plea that slowly disintegrated into a cacophony of rage. I dared a glance toward the door. It hung open, and in the faint, waning light from my phone screen, the floor beyond the threshold shimmered like molten silver. Shapes flickered just out of reach, fleeting glimpses of twisted faces, gnarled hands grasping at the nothingness, as if searching for something or someone to tether them back to this world. For a moment, strangely, the air was still, filled only with the echo of my panicked breaths. Then, out of the stillness, a low, guttural sound broke through. It rose from the depths of the shadows, seeping into my bones. Tension strained in every fiber of my being, leaving me frozen, unable to move or breathe, as if the very air had thickened to syrup. A figure emerged, distorted at first, but soon it drew closer, unveiling a mismatched array of limbs, impossibly elongated, dripping with the remnants of darkened shadows that clung to it like smoke. A twisted face contorted in agony slid into the light, one eye hollowed out, the other a crackling ember of burning confusion. It opened its mouth, and no sound came forth. Instead, its gaze locked onto mine, a visceral understanding passing between USA recognition of the unending suffering. Just as I thought the thing before me might speak, a sudden scream erupted from the depths of the void behind me, piercing, furious, like the wail of a banshee. My breath stalled, an icy grip of terror seizing my heart. The darkness erupted, spilling forth not one but countless figures, their mouths wide, grotesque, contorted in expressions of sorrow and rage, stretching past humanity, leave, or join us. They screeched, an unholy chorus that echoed relentlessly in my skull. Their bodies weaved and merged, an ocean of despair rising. The floor quaked, sending vibrations through me, a visceral reminder of the terrible power at work. I crawled back feverishly, helplessly, my fingers scraping against the wooden floor, the air turning frigid around me. The entity near the door lingered for a brief moment, its form flickering, and then with a loud pop, it collapsed into a whirl of shadows and smoke, merging with the souls that surrounded me. In the tremendous horror that enveloped me, realization struck: these were the remnants of lives lost, tethered here by unfulfilled wants, unable to pass into the afterlife. They weren't just seeking help, they were entangled in a destructive dance fueled by anguish and anger, and they wanted me to join. I felt the ground tremble violently. Panic surged anew, urging me to flee as the chorus intensified, threatening to pull me into their eternal circle of torment. Just then, the shadow reformed, now massive, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It towered, shifting ominously, black drips falling like rain around me. Become one of us, it lured, seductive and deceptive, its tone soft yet commanding. Your pain can synergize with ours. Together, we will avenge what was taken from us.no. The scream within turned into a howl, a desperate cry against the dying light. I surged to my feet, stumbling through the mass of darkness brushing against me like icy fingers of despair, each touch a searing reminder of the eternal torment they carried. But before I could run into the grip of safety, the shadows lunged, closing their distance, and the world around me warped beyond recognition. My phone flickered once more, illuminating a narrow path toward the far corner of the room. Run, run! I screamed internally, my legs propelled into motion, but even as I dashed away, the shadows morphed into a wall that surged forth, revealing grotesque faces, eyes pleading, yet filled with malicious intent. Just when I thought I had made it, I turned back to see the towering shadow behind me erupting in a fierce roar, darkness spilling from its mouth, an engulfing wave that overtook my senses. And then I heard her voice, soft and haunting, directly in my ear. Stay, don't leave us. In that split second, right before the engulfing darkness consumed me, I felt a cold grip around my wrist. My heart plunged, no longer resisting, I was sliding toward the inevitable. The last thing I heard before everything fell silent was the phrase eaten by the darkness, reverberating in my mind as I felt myself slipping away. Join us, forever. And just like that, my world shattered. I found myself suspended in a vast ocean of shadow, completely disoriented. The abyss pulsed around me like the heart of some ancient beast, breathing life into the darkened surroundings. For a second, I truly believed I had crossed into the realm of the dead, trapped between what was and what could never be, but then the cold struck me. A biting, frigid sensation ambushing my senses and snapping the fog of confusion. My eyes snapped open, and I was no longer floating. I lay sprawled on a cold floor, the familiar scent of rotting wood and dampness filling my nostrils. The shadows around me coiled and twisted, illuminated by a ghastly light emanating from somewhere near me, a flickering bulb, glaring with the sickly hue of greenish-yellow. As I gathered my bearings, I pushed myself upright, the bruises on my arms a reminder of my hasty escape from that terrifying place. I felt the weight of their yearning still stampeding through my veins, a visceral hunger propelled by desperation, misdirected love, and unyielding rage. Then, I heard its whispers again, feathery and sinister, curling around my mind like snakes. They reverberated just below the threshold of understanding, threading words I struggled to catch. Find us, the walls pressed in around me, forcing the air from my lungs. I scrambled to my feet, stepping with caution, each creak beneath my weight warning me that I was never truly alone. Shadows clung to the edges of my vision, darting just out of sight, retreating whenever I turned my head. But I sensed their presence, a palpable weight resting in the room, charged with an urgent need that pulled at the fibers of my being. Something caught my attention, a door, cracked open just enough to allow a sliver of light to pour through. It beckoned to me like a lighthouse in a sea of midnight, promising refuge from the torments lurking nearby. I moved toward it, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm, aware of the claws of despair that still scraped at my back. As I approached, the whispers intensified, converging, morphing into a single, desperate harmony that held my name, my own identity twisted into their mournful symphony. "You're one of us, stay with us." I hesitated, fear tightening my throat, but the promise of safety spurred me onward. The door swung open at my tentative touch, revealing a hallway drenched in the same sickly light, every step I took amplified by the oppressive energy swirling around me. Suddenly, the air shifted, and a deep chill plunged from the ceiling, wrapping around my neck like the fingers of a noose. Shadows flickered ominously along the walls, distorting into grotesque images scenes of death, loss, and regret played out as if someone were drawing them in ink made from despair. Years of anguish etched into every grim mural bound me in place, as if I were watching not just visions but a narrative crafted by those who once lived, trapped in the very tale of their demise. Then, the sound of shattering glass pierced through the deafening quiet, pulling me back from the brink. I dashed down the hallway, adrenaline surging through me, panic that turned to horror as I caught sight of something out of the corner of my eye. In a room to my right, a figure stood hunched over an old mirror, its reflection rippling like water disturbed. But that wasn't the Horno. It was the face that became visible within the fractured glass, my own. There I was, staring back, eyes wide with terror, twisted lips forming a silent scream, the mirror unable to contain the anguish spilling forth. I could barely reconcile that tortured expression with the small bit of dignity I struggled to maintain. With every step, the whispers grew frenzied, echoing louder until they were a maddening roar. "Join us. It's too late for you. You'll never escape." Then suddenly, beyond the manic laughter of the shadows, came a voicey, a familiar and cherished sound that shattered my fraying nerves. "Please don't go." It was Sarah. My sister. Her voice threaded through the cacophony, fragile but full of warmth. "Sarah," I cried, spinning back toward the mirror. But the reflection remained a distorted version of me, lifeless and cold, an echo of the past that had tainted my present. "What are you doing?" she pleaded, her voice twining inside my head. "Don't follow them, they're lying to you. You don't belong here." I reached out, desperate to pull free from whatever pull that mirror had over me. I felt the icy breath of the shadows creeping around my ankles, urging me to step deeper into their world. "Sarah, help!" I shouted, hearing only the mocking laughter of the shadows fueled by my cries. Just then, there was a sharp tug at my wrist, a chill so icy it brought me to my knee. I jerked my head back, and the silhouette at the door instantly crystallized. The creature that had haunted my dreams now loomed just beyond the threshold, its grotesque mouth curling into a smile of jagged teeth, eyes glowing ablaze with unholy hunger. "Leave her. Come to us." It howled, pulling the darkness along with it, and the demonic melody of morbid laughter spiraled around me. My fingers slipped under the pressure, the mirror resurfacing closer than my wildest fears. I could feel them losing their grip on their hold over me, but I had to make a choice, and as the shadows grew ever nearer, threatening to consume everything I held dear, I caught sight of Sarah's pleading eyes, drowning in silent terror within the mirror's depths. In an instant of heart-stopping clarity, I lunged, bright consciousness spilling into a needle of hope. "No!" I screamed, ready to shatter the glass barrier that held her at bay, the moment freezing in time even as the shadows converged, eager to seal my fate. "Join us!" The creature shrieked in wild delight, but the moment my fingers grazed the edges of that mirror, an unbearable crack split through space. And as reality eroded around me, the light of day extinguished into a void, I wasn't sure if I would save here or if I would lose everything as darkness swallowed my last fleeting vision of the world outside. In that final heartbeat, the words detached from reason and swept over me, "You will not escape, we are many." And then silence. I woke to a suffocating darkness that pressed all around me, invading my lungs, making it difficult to breathe. It felt as if I were ensnared in an invisible web spun from nightmares, the strands moist and aggressive as they clung to my skin, pulling me deeper into an unfamiliar realm. The realization hit me like a vice around my skull. My surroundings were not just dim, they were absolute, unfathomable dark. I struggled to comprehend where I was, heart racing, desperation clawing at my throat. Had I awakened in a cave? An underground crypt? No, it felt too constricting, too intimate for either. More like a womb forged of shadow. Panic surged, propelling me to my feet, and I stumbled forward, clawing against the palpable blackness that seemed almost sentient. Sarah! I cried out into the void, each echo swallowed by silence until they ricocheted back to me as distorted whispers. Fragments of memory clawed at my mind, images of her fading smile, the weight of her presence drawing me in. And then, within that sea of darkness, I felt a flicker of light, a distant glow like the dying embers of a candle. My instinct guided me, I had to reach it. As I stumbled toward this beacon, a presence floated at the edge of my consciousness, a tendril of icy dread weaving itself into my thoughts. The whispers grew more distinct, warping through the air like a chorus of lost souls, each voice entwined with longing and despair. They called to me, a cacophony of convicted wails, masking their true intent with faux compassion. You are one of us. Come, we will never let you go. Each step felt heavier than the last, shadows gnawing at my ankles, urging me to surrender, to succumb to the numbing grasp of defeat. I pressed on, fueled by the flickering resolve within me. The light grew stronger, illuminating the wall to my right, revealing fleeting images carved into the moss-covered stone. A family, faces contorted in anguish, limbs reaching out as if to grasp something intangible. With a shudder, I slammed against the damp surface, catching my breath as panic twisted in my gut. I pressed my forehead against it and whispered Sarah's name again, a beacon for her to hone in on, as I felt the warmth of that light pulse closer. But then the shadows roared back, their crescendo shattering all hope of solace in the light until one ethereal form emerged, a figure cloaked in mist like an executioner of the expired. It hovered just beyond my reach, face obscured, though I could feel its gaze piercing through the darkness, a malevolent sight that stoked the embers of pure terror curling in my chest. Leave now, it intoned in hallowed tones, voice echoing like a foghorn in the night. You have no place among the living. You belong to us, Henry. The voice of my sister reached me once more, urgency threading through its gentle timbre. My heart soared at the familiarity, and I took a breath deep enough to expand my lungs, feeling both the push and pull of two worlds warring within me. Sarah! I shouted back with renewed vigor. But the voice that didn't belong to her hissed in its retribution, she is gone. Let her be forgotten, and join us. The shadows curled tighter around my legs as if tightening a noose, squeezing out remnants of defiance. My throat tightened with grief for her, and despair tugged at my heartstrings. Join us and live. The wraith-like figure beckoned again, and I felt an unsettling shift in the air surrounding, meth scent of despair and death wafting into my nostrils like decay and rot. It blended with the warmth of my sister's essence, an intoxicating lure urging me to step away from the light. The flicker of warmth receded as I lost grip on the memory of Sarah's laughter, only to flounder in the agonizing depths of hopelessness. Whatever you are, you lie. I screamed back, the words like silver bullets ricocheting off the walls, pushing them momentarily away. Do you deny what you are? The question slithered back, heavy with dread. You are but a ghost of your own choosing, Henry. We are all here because we chose to forget, and you are already part of the shadow. I recoiled, heart pounding in rhythm with despair, awareness dawning that perhaps they were right. Perhaps this was my punishment, perhaps I wasn't meant to walk among the living any longer. Perhaps Sarah was lost. No. I shouted, voice throwing off the shackles of doubt like shackles rusted through time. I had one last chance. With every ounce of will, I turned back toward the dim glow, hardly taking note of the screams flooding through my ears. With a primal scream, I hurled my body forward, desperately reaching for that light, but the shadows lunged, fingers of darkness wrapping around my wrists to drag me backward, and just as hope threatened to dissolve, just as I reached for the shimmering glow of my sister, everything faltered. It was as if time splintered. The light flickered like a candle in a storm, revealing a ghastly vision of reality unraveling. The last thing I saw was Sarah's face twisted in pain, her mouth opening as though trying to scream. I reached desperately towards her, heart lurching as the shadows pulled me back into their depths. Then, in one final split-second gasp of clarity, her anguished expression morphed into something sinister, a dark mirth sparkled in her once gentle eyes. "Henry," she whispered, voice slipping like sand through my fingers, "you should have joined us sooner." At that moment, the darkness consumed me, and the screams changed voices, turning from echoes to a haunting echo of human laughter, tidal waves crashing over me like a relentless storm. It was at that moment I realized with terror, I was no longer the lost one, perhaps I was the lost one they sought all along. And as the laughter faded into silence, I prepared to meet whatever horrors awaited, horrified by the realization that I was no longer alone in my despair. My hand began slipping into the shadow, ready to embrace the fate they offered, but deep within, the flicker of Sarah's warmth was drowned out, claimed by the void. And then, as if reading my thoughts, something clawed at the edges of my vision, pulling itself slowly from the dark. "I found you," it hissed. And then the darkness surged, claiming my world once more. The darkness clung to my skin, a damp shroud enveloping me deeper with each fleeting moment. I felt the suffocating void pulse with malevolence, a heartbeat of despair in the stillness, and I understood, this was no ordinary shadow, but a living entity that thrived on fear and regret. I strained against its grip, grappling with an undefinable dread that clawed at my sanity. As the echoes of Sarah's haunting laughter faded, they were replaced by a sickening hush. My heart pounded in my chest. Was I truly alone, or merely waiting for the ghosts that lurked just beyond my perception? The thought tightened the noose of panic around my throat, and I realized I could no longer count on my memories to guide me. They twisted too easily into this insidious darkness. Suddenly, the first chill of true terror slithered down my spine. It wasn't the suffocating shadows that swirled around me. No, it was the echoes of scratching, brittle, desperate claws tearing through the fabric of the void, sending reverberations through my bones. It was distant, yet it filled the space with a promise of horror looming just out of reach. "Henry," a voice slithered through the darkness, weaving like smoke around my ears, both familiar and wrong. "Come closer." I turned in the direction of the sound, my heart caught in the throes of fear. "Sarah?" I called, a prayer pressed against trembling lips. "Not just her," the voice answered, morphing into a chorus of syllables spoken in unison, chilling and eldritch. "Not just her." My breath lodged in my throat as specters began to emerge through the opaque shadows, faces twisting in agony, mouths stretched in silent screams, all the lost souls of my past converging on my position. They shimmered like mirages, distorting the memories trapped within me. Each one was a soul drenched in sorrow, weaving a web of despair that mirrored my own. "Join us," they murmured, voices droning like a broken hymnal, an echoing lullaby of despair. No. I refuse. I roared against the cacophony, though uncertainty gnawed at my determination. How many more souls had succumbed? Was I destined to join them? Yet the mere act of defiance seemed to energize the oppressive darkness, whirling in dizzying patterns around me, feeding on my desperation. I caught glimpses of faces I thought had long since faded, friends who had vanished into the abyss, shadows I had ignored in my own life before. Each had their eyes washed of brightness, replaced by the dim ember of anguish. Just behind the first row of lost souls stood something larger, a form solidifying in the haze, cloaked in a patchwork of grief and malice. Its presence felt like ice carving granules of fear into my spine, but even that was nothing compared to the sensation of its unseen gaze. "I can free you, Henry," it intoned, voice layered and eerie. "But first, you must understand. This place, it feeds on sorrow. It requires sacrifice." "What do you mean?" I spat, more on instinct than comprehension. "Every bond you sever between the living and the dead strengthens their hold. Would you prefer their pain over yours?" The figure whispered. It felt like something slippery coursing through my thoughts, curling around the edges, squeezing until I had no choice but to listen. The faces of the damned shifted in unison, their screams merging into a tidal wave of anguish enveloping me. I closed my eyes against the sound, but even then, visions of their fates plagued me, insurmountable grief suffocating those who were still alive, all while their spirits languished, trapped, they were calling for me to take the plunge, to lose myself as they had to drift into the abyss and free myself from the burden of existence. Just then, a pull at my leg caught my attention, an insistent tugging that snapped me out of the confusion. I glanced down to find not just shadows, but gnarled hands clawing up from the depths, dragging at my ankles. "Help us!" they cried, their demands twisted and serpentine. "No! I cannot!" I screamed, panic flooding my voice, desperation shaking me. "You are not real, then awaken our truth," the watchers hissed, "you can take their place." That I staggered back, struggling against the curling fingers of despair clinging to my limbs. The shadows cried louder, desperate for vengeance, and for a moment, the realization struck me, they weren't merely specters, they were echoes of choices yet to be made, beckoning me toward their fate, feeding on every shred of light I bore. "I will not be one of you," I bellowed, summoning the last remnants of my spirit. But the shadows swelled, surging as a wave toward me, insatiable, screaming to engulf me, and then, just as I felt hope's last flicker snuffed out, the darkness exploded around me. I was thrust to the ground as a luminous figure emerged from the turmoil, infusing the air with warmth and spectral brilliancy, a radiant light so profound it nearly seared my eyes. From this brilliant mass, a figure solidified. It was Sarah, luminous yet distressed, her eyes pleading and filled with infinite sorrow. "Henry! You must listen to me!" she cried, reaching out toward me, her face a perfect blend of love and despair. But before I could reach for her again, the shadows erupted, swallowing her light, and in that instant, an old, guttural voice emerged from the maw of darkness, its sinful grin coiling around my heart. "She wants to save you, Henry." But what if she was merely a distraction? With that, the mocking face of shadows shifted into something darker, a version of my sister cloaked in ambiguity. Its eyes gleamed with a sinister mirth as Sarah's form struggled against the tide, her voice muffled by the angry chorus, "How far will you go to save her?" It taunted, an eternal question spiraling through the air, and then, the shadows surged once more, pulling me into its embrace, longing to devour what hope remained, demanding I make my choice. I could either succumb to a void of despair or accept the darkness as a part of me, forever intertwined with the souls I had once loved. Before I could decide, an agonizing scream pierced the darkness, a voice so familiar it sent shivers down my spine. I spun around, hoping it was Sarah, only to find the faces of countless lost souls closing in, arms outstretched in longing, for they'd found another. And as the dark laughter filled the space around me, the interruption shattered my sanity. I realized within that dimension of torment that time had ceased. Question marks fluttered in my mind. Was I meant to save her or join them all? But right then, as their hands brushed against my skin, I heard her unmistakably one last time, "Henry." And with that fleeting moment, a blinding flash erupted through the darkness, a cost, yet free of choice. The last thing I felt was the pull of the shadows being torn asunder, their broken mockery echoing as something unfathomable dragged me and my sister deeper into the heart of night. In the engulfing blackness, chaos roared around me like a tempestuous sea. The frantic screams of the souls united in inevitability drowned my thoughts in a maelstrom of terror, each voice an echo of despair melded into a single chorus urging me to succumb. I could feel the essence of the darkness wrapping tighter around me, binding me to its sorrows while a flickering hope fought to resist. But then I was pulled, yanked from the grasp of the shadows. I couldn't tell if it was the sheer force of denial or the sinister will of an unseen harbinger, but I felt a violent jolt propelling me upwards, breaking free for an agonizing heartbeat. All at once, warmth flooded through me like a summer sun blazing through the winter gloom. I cracked my eyes open, the brilliance nearly blinding. Sarah stood before me, ethereal yet so exquisitely real, her aura a balm against the chilling gnaw of the otherworld. "Henry! You have to fight!" she implored, her voice a crystalline bell cutting through the black void. Her fingers reached for me, laced with glowing threads of light, desperately entwining in the fading shadows around me, but shadows began to leer, splitting apart droplets of memory and dread, closing in to reclaim what they sought. "Oh, how foolish you are!" the dark version of Sarah hissed, mingling with true Sarah's image, creating an unsettling synthesis. "You can't save him, your time is over," but we can share everything forever. Conflicted, I grasped at Sarah's warmth, her fierce determination melding with my fading hope. Together, I cried, but tentacles of despair twisted around my legs, pulling me back, a relentless tide of malevolence clawing at the tendrils of my sanity. Leave him. He belongs to us now, shrieked the voiceless wails of the damned, becoming an ocean of grief that surged toward us. I felt their sorrow drown my soul, thoughts of despair rising like mist in the dead air. Remember, Sarah shouted, her radiant eyes piercing through my confusion. We have to trust in our memories. Your light can banish this darkness. Her presence shimmered as if tightening a bond, and suddenly a flood of recollection surged through my mind, a montage of laughter, joy, and untold love bound among the threads of despair. Yet even as I clung to those memories, the grotesque face of my dark doppelganger twisted into a grimace, a jarring reminder of the darkness within. You think fond memories can hold against the weight of sorrow? I will show you what you fear the most. I will awaken the ghosts inside you. It lashed out, a horrifying echo of every regret that lay dormant, awakening the demons of my past. Suddenly, I was transported in a ghastly parade of moments from my life, each one shaping my path. I could see friends I'd failed, faces I'd forgotten, and blood ties that had frayed. Every lost love clawed at my mind, every missed opportunity a blade beckoning me to succumb. I gasped as spectral forms invaded this waking nightmare, a continuous carousel of my past hanging before me like pendulums of despair. Join us in your eternal lament, they chorused, gathering around like vultures. Their mouths twisted into shapes of compassion dripping with malice, begging for my submission. Desperation coursed through my veins as I tore my gaze from their sorrowful expressions, focusing on Sarah. I won't let you win. I shouted, but the darkness spread beneath my voice, a heady taunt trickling through the fabric of my courage. No? The mocking shadow hissed, ephemeral remnants of my memories swirling about, vibrant yet tainted. What if I revealed the truth about her? Would that change your heart? At that moment, the shadows folded in on themselves, and a new voice surged. A father's growl from the grave. Do you love her enough to find the darkest secret that binds you? The earth trembled beneath my feet as their words turned into an unfathomable vortex, threatening to engulf us both. I reached for Sarah, but the very ground beneath her shimmered, splitting the connection between us, bridging the truth and the unknown, with horror crystallizing in my veins. My past lived again in excruciating detail, revealing a concealed truth that shattered my heart. A whisper of betrayal, stained memories of abandonment shrouded in grief, and I recoiled at the figure emerging from the deep, the spectral semblance of my father, eyes dulled by betrayal. Are you ready to learn what death has concealed? What you've done to save her? He lurked, a wraith of guilt rising with a haunting laugh that resonated deep within my chest. No. I screamed, desperation clawing my throat, but the shadows pressed forward. The air grew heavy with anguished voices erupting into cacophony, drowning me in wails of torment, demanding acknowledgement. The grip around me tightened, and I felt my very essence fraying at the edges. Each step back I took seemed to invite an onslaught of memories. Where was the thin line that separated salvation from sacrifice? And in that moment, just when I thought I could escape, the screaming intensified, filling my ears with a sorrowful chant, "Choose, Henry. Choose." With the weight of unknown secrets burdening my heart, the shadows promised freedom but beckoned destruction. Desperate to escape the haunting clutches of the past, I realized that in facing the darkness outside, I might lose the only light I had left. Just as I felt myself teeter on the precipice of despair, the spectral form of my father lunged forward, dragging the truth into focus, the abyss threatening to swallow me whole. Save her? He bellowed one last time, just as I felt the world tilt beneath me, and then, as I braced for the plunge, a startling silence enveloped me like the world had taken a breath before the annihilation. I felt an icy hand clamp tightly around my heart, squeezing with a ferocity so familiar yet altogether grotesque. Before you decide, it murmured with sinister delight, know this. The truth you seek lies intertwined with the anguish you create. As the void opened up beneath me one final time, I screamed not for help, but for answers, and as the echoes of my fate spiraled into oblivion, I grasped desperately for the light surrounding me and the glistening figure of Sarah, hoping against hope to feel her touch once more before the darkness pulled me under completely. But the last thing I heard was the cacophony of countless souls rising, a symphony of terror, a crescendo of agony that would forever echo my choice, as I slipped into the depths of the unknown. An unfathomable chasm yawned beneath me, ripping apart the fabric of reality as my heart pounded with unbridled terror. The weight of darkness bore down, wrapping around my limbs like a vice, clawing its way into my mind. In that frozen moment, I plummeted, cascading through shadows that stretched into an endless night. And then came light. Not warmth, but an incandescent brightness that seared my retinas with the intensity of 1,000 suns. As I regained my senses, I was not greeted by salvation, but by an alien landscape draped in suffocating mist. I stood in an abandoned town square, its cobblestones slick and dark, seeming to breathe under the mist's caress. Shadows danced at the periphery of my vision like specters, tauntingly hinting at the horrors lurking within every recessed corner. "Henry," a voice called, warped yet tantalizingly familiar. I turned, hope igniting my chest, only to find Sarah's now distorted reflection in the mist. She was there, but not herself. Her features wavered like the surface of a disturbed pond, and the vibrant warmth I once knew was replaced by an icy specter that sent shivers deep into my spine. "Help me!" she cried, and as her hand extended toward me, it became skeletal, fingers twisting grotesquely until they knotted into dark tendrils that clawed at the very foundation of my reality. I recoiled, even as hope strained at the edges of my mind. "Henry!" she begged again, but something had changed within her. The shadows that embraced her screamed in a silent choir, hissing at me like snakes unveiling their fangs. "You need to remember. You have to face what you've done." Tremors of dread surged, the air thick with the stench of decay mingling with damp earth. Shadows seized my thoughts anew, dredging up fragments of memories that felt layered under years of suppression. I could see my father's face flickering at the edges of my consciousness, an unrelenting reminder of promises broken. No. I shouted, scrambling for clarity, but the shadows tightened around me, pulling me down, gnashing at my fear. The cobblestones beneath my feet shifted, reshaping to form a bramble of blackened roots resembling grasping hands. Each touch felt like betrayal, each sound echoed with silent screams. That I stumbled back, dread pulling sharp as I caught sight of the town's dilapidated buildings. Facades loomed over me, walls covered in crimson stains that dripped like tears from an abstract cry of anguish. The windows were dark voids, whispers issued forth, rasping with disjointed laughter, shadows gambling in the corners of my vision. "Return what is lost," they murmured, each tone a slithering reminder of my indiscretions. The winds whispered names, taunts woven into the chilling breeze. I had abandoned, I had betrayed, and I could not escape the reckoning. "Henry!" Sarah's voice shattered through the chaos, her silhouette breaking temporarily from the pull of shadows. "You can't let them consume you. Our love is stronger than they know." "Then we'll fight," I cried out, desperation igniting the last remnants of courage within me. I reached for her again, blazing with determination, but the shadows roared angrily, engulfing Sarah, fracturing her essence into ghostly fragments that shimmered and faded against the pallid sky. Just then, a young boy, no older than 10, stumbled into view, his eyes wide and terrified. He looked decidedly out of place, out of time, and he was grasping something tightly in his small hand, a piece of torn fabric, perhaps a remnant of childhood. "Help me find her," he cried, voice a strangled whisper drowned by encroaching blackness. "She's lost. She's waiting for you." "Who?" I asked, confusion swirling as the weight of trapped memories clawed at my mind. Before he could respond, the mist thickened, coiling around him, and his face morphed into a canvas of fear and anguish, a mask of lost innocence. The shadows claimed him, pulling him beneath a layer of darkness that rippled with feral hunger. No. I shouted, lunging forward, but I felt an invisible restraint forcing me back. I could sense 1,000 eyes watching from the shrouded mist, engaging in this tragic conspiracy waged against hope. "Why do you torment me? Mistakes are eternal," rasped a voice from the shadows, disembodied yet eerily close. You tread upon paths forged in blood. To gain what you desire requires sacrifice. How far are you willing to go? The ground beneath me erupted in a clash of spectral apparitions, visions of my past flickering like a fractured film reel. Friends, enemies, lost loves, each phantasm reached out with bone-chilling fingers. They chanted my name, voices layered in chaos, their unified despair manifesting once more. In that moment of impending dread, a jarring realization erupted. How could I have not remembered? I gasped. There, among them, stood a familiar silhouette encased in shadow, a reflection of myself, muddied with guilt. The unity of my past clawed at my sanity, whispering a soothing promise as tremors rippled through the ground. The shadows beckoned me, drawing closer with conspiratorial urgency. Just as I began to understand the horrific truth binding us all, the elder specter of my father reappeared, his face contorted in an eternal scream, eyes burning with rage and regret. You are the architect of your own suffering, Henry. But I can show you the way if you dare. And beneath the cacophony of wails rose a deafening silence, punctuated by my father's final scream of choose. It echoed through the chasms of dread, and then the ground splintered beneath me with one last, shuddering quake. As I fell once more into the abyss, the world distorted around me, and the voices faded into a dreadful lull, leaving only the echo of Sarah's name hanging on my lips. Just then, a chilling realization gripped my heart. The darkness was all-consuming, yet somehow, in the depths, there thrived an unspeakable truth, one I could yet uncover, one I might forever evade. The question remained as the shadows lurked, waiting for my answer, the final price yet to be paid. The plunge into darkness was like diving into a thick tar, clammy and constricting, as I surrendered once more to the weightlessness of dread. The cacophony of far-off wails echoed around me, drowning the fading chorus of my father's imploring voice. For moments that stretched into eternity, I was spiraled down through the obscurity, until abruptly, I crashed against cold earth, forcing a gasp through my lips that I landed in an even more oppressive layer of this cursed real-man expanse filled with half-formed shapes that flickered around me like damaged holograms, a ghostly echo of a life that wasn't mine. The ground pulsed as if it were alive, vibrating beneath me in a steady rhythm that felt maddeningly familiar. I struggled to stand, surrounded by a labyrinth of grotesque visions slithering through the ethereal dimness. Find her, a rasp echoed deep within the shadows, its urgency urgent and familiar. Panic seized me as I sought clarity, the faces across the undulating darkness shifting a distorted gallery of grief and rage. I stumbled upon one figure, hunched over like a marionette, their features shrouded in twisting strands of darkness. Please help us, the figure rasped, a voice severed by profound sorrow. Out from the shadows stepped familiar eyes I hadn't seen in years. It was Margaret, my childhood friend who had vanished without a trace, lost to a night I had long suppressed from my memory. Margaret. Is it really you? I stumbled closer, the pulsating shadows reacting to my emotions like a beast to its prey. Her face flickered, the joy of recognition twisted in haunting agony. Help us! She cried, reaching toward me, her fingers trembling as they spread. You must remember the night of the storm. We didn't make it out, none of us did. You were supposed to save me. The echoes of a forgotten storm reverberated within me, but the details swirled just outside my grasp. I sought to push through the fog of confusion, desperation rising, yet shadows coiled tighter around me, squeezing my heart with unseen hands. Don't let them take you, Henry. Margaret warned, her form wavering. You're the key, they crave your fear. Only you can break the cycle. A guttural roar erupted from the depths of the mist, and something larger than the despair of lost souls emerged, a mass of elongated limbs and ghastly faces. Their collective screams recoiled against the echoes of Margaret's plea, a cacophony designed to tear my sanity apart. No. I shouted, grounding myself against the vibrant pulse of fear. The shadows hissed, losing footing, but the oozing darkness lingered, reforming as a monstrous maw filled with elongated teeth, gnashing in anticipation. Make the choice. A shrieking chorus soared around me, distorting the very essence of sound and reason. I felt the draw of every shadow, a thrumming pull urging me toward oblivion, toward forgetting, toward a release I had long sought and never deserved. Henry. Remember. Margaret screamed, her form illuminating just enough to keep the monsters at bay for a fleeting moment. Her sacrifice sparked flames of determination within me, igniting the memories buried within. I could see the promise I had broken, the sacrifice I had avoided. As the monsters lunged forward, I lunged back, thrashing against the ropes of darkness binding me. I will not succumb, I declared, setting my heart against the tide of agony that towered before me. The ground trembled, as if in acknowledgement of my fury, and then, through the haze of nightmares converging, I remembered. The choice was mine, a choice not merely of life and death but of past and future, of absolution and perpetual torment. With newfound clarity, I pressed forward, a force of reckless rebellion against the tide of despair, determined to reclaim all I had lost. The shadows writhed with fury as I surged towards Margaret, straining to gather every ounce of courage inside me, grasping for the remnants of lives once entwined. Just as I reached her trembling form, an ear-splitting roar erupted from the abyss, drowning out my conviction. A colossal shape rose from the depths, surging with a darkness that seemed to consume all light. "Fool!" bellowed the beast, its voice a shattering sound that crackled through the air. "You think you can defy what was written in blood? You are merely a pawn, a vessel for our hunger, then let me be a vessel of fire," I screamed, urging Margaret to hold on as I focused every fiber of my being towards the storm brewing within me. "You will not devour any more lives," and just as the beast lunged, teeth glimmering like cruel moonlight, Margaret's eyes brightened, a faint glimmer of perhaps long-forgotten power that flickered to life. "Together," she whispered, and in an agonizing moment of unity, we joined our spirits, illuminating the surrounding void in flickers of defiance. But even as I felt a surge of strength and hope blossom, an anguished scream rippled through the chasms as the dark beast collided with my burgeoning light. And in that instant of radiant unity and wretched horror, everything around me began to unravel, pieces of the shadow realm breaking apart, an exodus of chaos that echoed, a chilling promise that echoed louder than the screams. From the cracks emerged unfamiliar forms, wraiths lurking in the shadows, shadows of those I had never known yet felt intertwined with. A haunting presence enveloped me, leaving me breathless. "You cannot escape the past, it always finds a way to return." As the spectral cacophony echoed around me, spinning the fabric of reality into an irreversible spiral, I understood I had reignited something far worse than I could comprehend. The realm began to shatter, a looming darkness unfurling before me, a fate worse than the ghosts of my past rising up. And with that realization, I saw them, dozens of lost souls clawing their way from the fissures of the shadows, reaching for me with hungry desperation. "Join us, Henry," their voices intertwined into a tragic symphony, weaving a chilling tapestry of fate, as I felt myself drawn helplessly towards their aching wails, caught in a web of despair so deeply spun that I could not find my way out. In that final moment, the swirling shadows exploded around me, and I plunged into a world darker than the horrors I had foreseen, a place where ghosts of the living condemned me to pay the ultimate price for salvation. I woke in darkness, the familiar weight of dread pressing down upon me like an anvil. I could barely breathe, suffocated by the memories, flooded with the frightful realization that I was entangled with the very souls I had yearned to escape. Panic surged through me again as the shadowy tendrils tightened around my limbs, dragging me deeper into their insatiable hunger. "Help us!" a chorus of whispers begged, their voices a haunting melody of despair that tangled my heartstrings. Images of faces long lost flooded my mind, each one clad in torment, lost within the void, a torrent of agony released upon my consciousness. I staggered, fighting the pull, desperation propelling me forward. Yet the shadows beckoned in their insidious song, teasing me with forgotten promises and unresolved guilt. "You belong with us." With every step, they danced closer, forming grotesque shapes that blended with the darkness, swirling in abhorrence. Their sorrow oozed into every corner of my mind, and I felt my resolve teeter. "This isn't who I am," I shouted, every ounce of defiance rising within me. But the shadows only howled, an angered wind fueled by my defiance. Is that the truth? A voice slithered out from the void, darker than any shadow I had witnessed, coiling around me like a serpent. You've hidden from the truth for too long. You think you can escape because you've forgotten what you've done. I turned, desperately scanning the tortured faces, and amidst the cacophony, something began to take shape. A memory emerged from the depth of a Gonya girl with golden hair, bright eyes shining with innocence. Margaret. Henry, you mustn't. She erupted in unison with the shadows, her features flickering between ethereal light and dark. This place will consume you if you don't confront what you've abandoned. You owe us, you owe me, no. I gasped, as recollection washed over me. A storm that evening, the frantic calls, a split-second decision that had shattered lives. I had run. I had chosen to flee. But as the dimensions folded around me, the darkness burrowed deeper, its tendrils of despair weaving around the marrow of my bones. I couldn't save you. The shadows recoiled momentarily, hissing and swirling with agitation. But then the darkness gathered again, weaving its tangled web back around me, suffocating yet seductive. You left her behind, Henry. And she never made it out. You're not free, you're tethered by guilt. Thus spoke the shadows hymn, drowning any remnants of hope I held onto. Suddenly, an anguished scream erupted, slicing through the darkness like a knife. I turned in horror to see a fragment of my father, a spectral version of the man I had feared. You think I could abandon you? He bellowed, rage and betrayal emblazoned upon his ghostly visage. You let them die, and now, you bear their sins like scars upon your soul. The images around me morphed into scenes of twisted apologies, every lost moment echoing my guilt, clawing at my heart. The faces of my loved ones contorted, accusing, demanding retribution. You left us. They shrieked, the shadows melding into one horrific voice, the shadows multiplying into countless forms, all desperate to draw me into their eternal torment. That I staggered backward, dread swallowing every ounce of courage. No. I won't join you. The words fell on deaf ears. The shadows lunged, join us. Become whole. A desperate flight surged through my veins as I fought against their grasp, pushing against the chaos encroaching upon me but powerless against their malevolence. In that moment of chaos a spark. A flicker of warmth amidst the dark. Through the inky abyss, I saw her face again, the real Sarah, untouched by anguish. Trust in love. She called, her arms reaching out against the tide, piercing through the shadows. It carries the foundation. You must remember the light. The chaos intensified as the shadows writhed, protesting against the rare light. You're a fool to trust them. They hissed, but I could feel her light, shimmering just beyond the veil. I grasped tightly to that glimmer, my heart racing, fighting against the looming darkness. Remember the truth, I whispered to myself, tapping into that fleeting spark. Memories cascaded off laughter, of bonds forged stronger than fear, of promises yet to be fulfilled. And with every memory, the darkness around me waned, shadows retreating as the warmth of love surged within. I won't forget. I roared, pressing forward. I won't let them take me. And just when I thought I would be consumed, the shadows recoiled, screeching in despair as I embraced that flicker of light. As the darkness broke apart, I glimpsed my father and Margaret entwined amongst the escaping shadows, their faces expressing a blend of pride and where sorrow lay. But just as victory began to claim me, a horrifying revelation broke through the haze, truth hidden too long that shattered the bonds I struggled to mend. I had demanded vengeance from myself, and those spectral echoes hungered for completeness. The darkness wasn't just from leaving them behind, it breathed life into a new entity I knew was within me. Henry, the shadows murmured, a chilling echo of my very own thoughts. You are one of us. Panic clawed at me, for I understood. My past intertwined with the shadows. They weren't just remnants of lost souls, they were each regret I had buried, waiting for this moment. And as I grappled with the realization, the dark became clearer. They weren't just seeking revenge, they sought to pull me down into the depths, offering something I hadn't anticipated, a twisted alliance. No. I yelled defiantly. But it was too late. With one last lurch forward and the sobbing voices of the many, they surged, recognizing the flicker of light, but it was a flicker dying against the encroaching darkness. "Join us forever," they pleaded, whispered promises of power offering in exchange for my last shred of hope, shadowed by despair, and then silence fell. I was enveloped in an overwhelming swell of darkness brimming with agony and triumph. The last thing I saw the silhouette of Sarah, Margaret's face fading, their eyes pleading for salvation I could no longer provide. As the shadows claimed me, a chilling laugh echoed through my consciousness, laced with sorrowful joy, intertwining with the darkness that now vibrated within me. "You are one of us, forever, and you'll never be free." In that haunting acceptance, darkness settled in its icy grip embracing me. And as I descended into that unfathomable abyss, I realized with horror that this was my new fate, the darkest truth I had become. And just before the world around me faded into nothingness, a single thought echoed in my mind: "You are the haunting now."